and welcome to a new Garden Gateway virtual workshop on deep watering. My name's Sage and I'm the Youth Program Coordinator here at Community Services Unlimited. Our Garden Gateway program hosts monthly gardening and nutrition classes. Because of COVID, we've transitioned onto virtual online workshop series. So if you're interested, you can check out our YouTube channel and website for more virtual resources. So today we're going to be talking about deep watering. And it might sound simple, but watering well ensures that our plants are healthy and happening. Deep watering equals deep root growth because it means that the water is actually penetrating deeper than the top layers of soil. And that ensures better water retention, which is especially important given that we are in California, usually battling a drought. We want to be really conscious about the water we're using. In a dry climate like California, where the wind and the sun cause a lot of water loss from the top layer of soil, deep watering ensures that our plants are getting all the water they need from their deep root system. Even allowing for some water loss and evaporation to happen, we can be sure that our plants are going to be healthy. So we're going to get into practices of deep watering and making sure that your plants have enough water. It's really important in your garden that you don't just water by the look of things, because that can be really deceiving. And just because something looks like soil is wet, it doesn't mean that the water is really deep into the ground. And we want to make sure that the water is deep into the ground because shallow water makes for shallow roots, and that leads to plants drying out and can make them more susceptible to disease. So we're going to start off with our deep water checklist, and the things on that list are the soil type you're working with, kind of weather you got, soil moisture check if you're going to be planting in the ground or a container, and then where exactly it is you're going to be watering. And so when we talk about soil type, we know that healthy soil is made up of 5 things, right? It's living components, humus, clay, silt, and sand. And it's really important to know if your soil has more of those than the others. So if you have really clay-like soil, it's going to hold a lot of water but take a long time for it to drain. And that's really important to be aware of, especially if you're planting in containers, because if you're watering it too much and it's not draining enough, that could lead to root rot. Sandy-like soil is going to drain really well but not hold on to the water as much, and then loamy soil is that nice in between. It's gonna drain well and hold on tight to that water too. So right here we have a really good example of really nice loamy soil. You can see when I pick it up, it has a lot of living things, there's not too much sand, and when I squeeze it, it doesn't really hold its form like clay would. So this soil is gonna drain really well and also hold in that water. Another important part of retaining water in your garden is understanding what type of weather you're going to be having. So if it's going to be really cloudy and even rainy, you want to check ahead into the weather forecast to make sure you're not watering that day. Too much water will lead to unhappy plants. Likewise, if you're going to be experiencing a week of really intense heat like this one, you're going to want to be especially careful about your watering so your plants don't get fried. I'd suggest, depending on your soil, a really deep water in the morning and then checking on them in the late afternoon, seeing if they need to touch up on anything. It's really important to check your soil before you water it because soil can be deceiving. Because a lot of the moisture evaporates, sometimes the top layer can look really dry. So you want to get your finger into the soil, down a couple layers, and check to make sure that there's still water. So earlier today we gave this bed of kale a really good deep thorough watering, and as you can see it still looks pretty wet, but now we're going to check to make sure that we did a good job, because we know that we can't just trust what things look like. We actually have to just dig around a couple inches below the topsoil to make sure that the water actually did soak on down. So I'm just going to go down. As you can see from just digging a couple inches below the topsoil, it's pretty wet, so that means the water did soak down into the roots. We gave this bed of collards a quick watering in the morning, and as you can see, it still looks kind of wet, but now we're going to check to see if we did a good job. So just like we did over with the kale, we're going to dig a couple inches under the ground. As you can see, we didn't even have to go that deep below the topsoil to see that it's still pretty dry under there, which means this bed definitely needs a deep watering. So this bed is a perfect example of why you shouldn't rely on what things look like, because in reality it could be much more dry than it seems. And actually by the end of the day, after a full day of sun on this bed, there'll be very little water in the soil at all due to evaporation. So when we work with the youth on the garden, we like to tell them that when we water, we want to try and simulate rain. So when we're watering, we have to use our thumb to make sure it's not coming out in one single stream. Most plants are too delicate to handle that, so we want to make sure we're covering a large area with small droplets for a long period of time. And this is all going to contribute to retaining that water and making sure we're getting a deep soak. So I'll stay like this over this watermelon for a long time to make sure it's really getting all the water it needs. So this is what we would say is like a pretty good way to water it, kind of making it look like rain, as opposed to the single stream, which I'm going to demonstrate in that corner, which is just like. And the reason the single stream is bad is because a lot of plants can't handle that amount of pressure on their root system. It also can push away a lot of that really good compost that's on the first layer of the soil, and it also prevents some of that really good drainage into the soil. So on the farm, we just use our thumb on the hose nozzle, but if you want, you could always go to any like home improvement store and buy an attachment that goes on top that actually allows you to control the stream that's coming out of the hose. And there's a lot of alternatives to using a hose as well, so we're going to get into talking about those right now. So here in this bed we have a bunch of sprinklers set up. They're actually old sprinklers and we don't use them anymore. And I'm going to get into why we do not recommend sprinklers as your system for watering. So sprinklers are just irrigation systems that are set up on a timer that throw water into the air that eventually like drains down into the soil. And one of the main reasons we don't recommend them is because of the fact that they're throwing the water out. The wind can oftentimes cause the water to miss its target. If you've seen like a sprinkler watering the sidewalk instead of whatever soil and plants is supposed to water, that's really common. And their aim in general is usually a little bit wide-reaching, and so we definitely recommend something more direct like drip irrigation or a hose, just to ensure that you're not wasting water, especially in California when we're thinking about being mindful about our water usage. And so if you do have a sprinkler system set up, you can actually link it up to a drip irrigation, which is something we definitely encourage folks to do. Drip irrigation is either a hose line that has holes in it, or it's a hose line made out of some sort of porous material that allows the water to seep out slowly. And it can sit either below or above the surface, and that allows the water to go directly into the soil. So unlike with sprinklers, you're not going to have that loss of water being thrown over the edge because it's seeping directly into the ground. It's super easy to maintain and adjust. Biggest cons to a drip line is that the holes can get clogged and it can rip or tear. If you don't have drip irrigation set up, you can actually just use your hose. Put the water pressure on super low and leave it on the plant or tree of your choice to make sure it gets a good, slow, deep watering. If you do choose to do this, make sure that you're coming back periodically to check on it and checking the soil to see how deep the water gets, because we don't want to drown our plants. So yeah, definitely remember to come back and check on it, but as you can see here, it's a great way to get your plants a slow and steady supply of water. And it lets you do other things in the garden at the same time. So now we're going to talk about Oyas. Oyas are a porous clay pot that sit below the surface and they have an opening on top. And they're super cool because when the soil around them is dry, water retention will actually pull water out of the Oya and into the surrounding soil. But if the surrounding soil is wet, the water won't come out of the Oya. So they're really awesome, super low maintenance. All you have to do is refill them. So if you're interested in learning more and even want to build your own, you should check out our other video coming out soon. Another great tool for water retention is mulch, and you can make mulch out of really anything: hay, wood chips, other organic material. Right here we have a bunch of pieces of old wood, and what we do is we just surround the base of the plant pretty heavily with the mulch, kind of like you're tucking it into bed. You want to put a good layer down all around it. So mulch is just another layer over our soil that prevents the sun from hitting it directly and helps with water retention because it prevents a lot of evaporation of water we put on our plant. Thanks for tuning into this segment of our virtual Garden Gateway workshop. If you liked our workshop, be sure to come back for more. You can check out our YouTube, our Instagram, and our website, and that's csuinc.org.